I don't think a lot of people rooted for Ukraine in the Russian-Ukrainian war. But seeing them still standing and fighting is a big surprise. At least for me. But then I read all about Ukraine's little secret, the military aid it is getting from other countries. Call them what you want, Russia's enemies or Ukraine's allies.
The frozen front lines in eastern Ukraine.
But the gist is the same. Ukraine has a strong support system that's basically carrying it to the finish line. Well, if the war ever ends. The biggest name in that list of allies is Canada. It sent such a massive gift to the Ukrainians that it sparked a huge debate online. Want to know more? Keep on watching. Number 1, Canada. Okay, I am going to give you a rundown of what Canada is handing off to the Ukrainian. Then it is up to you to decide if they were giving away their hand-me-downs or actually helping out the Ukrainian military. It all started a few months ago when Canada signed a deal to send CRV-7 rockets to Ukraine. Not just a couple hundred either, over 80,000 of them. 80,840 rockets to be exact, with a mighty stash of 1,300 warheads for the rockets, all being gifted to Ukraine for free. Doesn't that sound a bit shady to you? Well, even if it does, I wasn't the one with the odd chance of getting blown up by the rockets. It was the Russian. And this gift by Canada was like a massive sucker punch to them, who couldn't possibly have predicted this move. So, was it the huge number or the weapon in question that was the bigger problem? Turns out, both. In the world of rockets, the CRV-7 was an absolute beast, and an intimidating one too. It was built by Canada in the 1970s as an unguided air-to-ground rocket, but the military was so impressed with what they built that they decided to keep the weapon for 30 to 40 more years. And after seeing what this bad boy can do, I don't blame them one bit for keeping it as long as they did for combat. It was a massive upgrade from the older weapon. The CRV-7 came with a better speed, better accuracy, and a better plan for attack. All in all, it was a master of trades and targets looked like fleas in front of it. For starters, the CRV-7 could move at a blazing speed of nearly 2,500 miles per hour. That easily earned it the bragging rights for being the fastest 70mm rocket in its class. And why wouldn't it? The high speed was a game changer for the military. The targets were getting hit in a matter of a second, giving the enemy troops absolutely no time to run. It also meant that the army didn't have to send tens of rockets towards the enemies because only one of them was going to hit. Apart from the high speed of CRV-7, the military could also shoot precise targets with this rocket, getting the job done faster and in a much cleaner way. Not to mention, this helped the military save up on the ammo. On top of this, the rocket packed a power punch. If it was coming your way, you'd know you're doomed. Doesn't matter if you're in an armored vehicle, a bunker, or any other shelter, the speedy blow will find you and turn everything into rubble and dust. With a deadly combo like this, the enemy troops were bound to become victims to an open fire by the rockets. But you know what got me really worried for the Russians? The fact that the CRV-7 can shift from one warhead to another as the military sees fit in combat. It has 4 different kinds of warheads for every use. The first one could go up against armored targets. The second one was good for soft targets like fuel depots. The third one was a mighty offensive one for causing havoc over a wide area. And the last one was designed to pass through the hard structures and concrete buildings like bunkers. Nobody needed to put these claims to the test either.
Has arrived in Canada earlier this week to participate in fighter lead-in training, which was going to prepare them to fly the F-16 fighter jets and joining Ukraine's fleet. This training is now being funded by
all of these wild claims on the battlefield. But as the world looked for better and faster options, the CRV-7 had to be left behind. By 2010s, Canada had already declared this weapon obsolete. They were going to break it apart and send it back to the factory. The parts would somehow have come into use in building other weapons. And when the Russian-Ukrainian war popped up, Canada decided to dump these weapons on the Ukrainian. They believed that the military would make good use of the rockets and their parts, even if the rockets didn't come into use for them directly. I mean, obviously better options exist, but not for the Ukrainian military who's already quite short on both weapons and ammo. So, are the Canadian officials simply turning over their trash to some other country in the name of military aid? Because believe it or not, this would help them save a ton of money. And this is where I got a bit in doubt too. Why would they be sending thousands of rockets to Ukrainians who were on their way to get ripped apart? Turns out I wasn't the only one questioning Canada over this decision. The CRV-7 rocket quickly became a pretty controversial topic over the internet. Ever since there was a plan to decommission the weapon, the world didn't understand why Canada sent this battered old weapon to Ukrainian, let alone thousands. But a lot of people have come up defending Canada over this debate. They claim that the country has already sent a couple thousand of these rockets to the Ukrainian military before. How would a few more in the bag make it any different? That's still up for debate. There was this other group of people too who worried for the Russians, claiming that it would be a devastating blow for them. But do you really think that? I mean, yes, there are 80,000 rockets ready to blow up the Russians. But Ukraine has been surviving on military aid since the invasion happened. Maybe this gift might just even out the battlefield. But the reason why I am so cynical is not because of the big number, but because of one odd report. There was this claim from the Canadian officials that the rockets were decades old and could have become unstable over time. If they move on with the decision to send these rockets to Ukraine, they would have to ensure the rockets are not dangerous to transport. Now, obviously, they would have tested that, right? Who knows? But what I do know is that the cargo already arrived at Poland from where it went on its way to Ukraine. It reached the military only a few days ago and is expected to be a great help to the Ukrainian. With this contract in the bag, Canada's aid to Ukraine has inched closer to nearly $3.3 billion. So it doesn't seem like they are slacking with their free gifts. But whether or not it was a good choice to send the CRV-7 to Ukrainian, that's up to you to decide. Canada may or may not have been a huge help for the Ukrainian. We will see that in time. But what about other countries? What did they decide to send to the Ukrainian military? Number 2, the United States. I don't think seeing this name is even a surprise, at least not to anyone with even a mild interest in world politics. Obviously, the United States wanted to be in on all the action if there was a war happening against Russia. After all, both countries are each other's worst enemy. It is a no-brainer that they are one of the most generous allies of Ukraine, sending billions of dollars worth of goodies to the military in need.
Today, special thanks to the United States. Our agreements with United States President Joe Biden are being implemented. Very accurately, ATACMS proved themselves. Glory to Ukraine.
You want to guess the whopping price tag? It is nearly $44.4 billion in just 3 years. Ever since Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022, the U.S. hasn't shied away from sending military aid. But anything that the U.S. sends to Ukraine is enough to make Putin's big vein throbbing in anger. More than the money, it is the choice of weapons sent to Ukraine that have garnered attention. Mostly, the United States has been giving away all the Soviet-era weapons, but some of them turned out to be more handy to the Ukrainians than the U.S. could have ever thought. Now, there were a lot of weapons, but a few stood out of the crowd. The winner that comes to my mind is the ATACMS, the long-range deadly gun that can tear apart the troops with a straight face. The previous guns could only fire at a mere 50 miles from the standing point, but this gun, you won't believe it, but it can go beyond the 190-mile range. Talk about a savage hit. This tiny little detail allows the troops to fire far away from the raging war zone. The long-range distance alone was a big upgrade from the previous models, and the Ukraine gets to play around with it. But there is always a twist, and there were many when it came to ATACMS. Ukraine wasn't allowed to use the weapon inside Russia for a long time. It was like asking to fight with one hand tied behind the back, as told by the Ukrainian. And I do get them. Why send it if you have to put all these barriers? But only recently, Ukraine got the green light to put this machine into action. What happened next was a big shock to me. Ukraine didn't hesitate one bit from using the missiles inside of Russia and ended up blowing up a military facility overnight. This nasty surprise wasn't well received by the Russians, and it sent them straight into a state of fury. Anger, panic, accusations flying out of the window, the same old, same old. Honestly, it was a surprise to me. I checked out the long-range guns that Russia has been using against the Ukrainians, and they are far better than these battered ATACMS. So, what's with all the drama over an equal response? I mean, if you take everything into comparison, this attack was probably nothing for the Russians, but they had a lot to say over the media. They started accusing the United States of being behind the wheel of the operation. They are adamant that these missiles need guidance that only the US could offer from their satellite. There's no way Ukraine is taking charge of the ATACMS. That may or may not be true, but the scary bit is that the Russians did not wait a single second to see what is right from wrong. No, they have already sent out an indirect threat to the United States that this attack has opened the doors for a new Western war. It is no longer just a war with the Ukrainian. In fact, they have escalated. This, I 100% believe. I have no doubt that the Russians might get back on the horse and come after the United States. Heck, if they were free from the Ukrainians at this moment, they probably would have launched an attack by now. And that's not just scary to me. This statement has gotten the world and its superpowers into a state of utter panic. What if the Russians do retaliate? If a war does happen, how many countries would you stop from using a nuke? Do you think the world will have to see the consequences of the mistakes of the officials? But then again, that is pretty normal for us now. Plus, there's a war happening. Things could go either way. Number 3, Germany. Believe it or not, Germany was the second highest donor to the Ukrainian, giving about $11.4 billion in total to the country. It is pretty low if you take it up with the donation from the United States, but I bet Ukraine isn't complaining. And why would they? The Germans have even set up a Ukraine assistance fund that is expected to bring in more dollar bills for the country by the year 2027. So, whatever the two have going on, it is going to run long. But enough with the chit-chat on money. Let's look at what the Germans have been supplying to Ukraine for help on the battlefield. I'll be honest, I saw a very long list of weapons that the Germans were casually giving away to the Ukrainian, but the ones that caught my eye were the Leopard 1 and Leopard 2 tank. Germans promised Ukraine a total of at least 155 Leopard 1 tank. From this high number, about 58 of them were delivered to Ukraine a month ago.
The Germans originally wanted speed to be their best defense on this vehicle, so they put a really meaty MTU diesel engine in the back.
These tanks aren't the same ones used during the Cold War. No, the Germans put in the effort and time to do the tweaks in the tanks themselves, and this left me quite stumped. While every other country was throwing away their leftovers for the Ukrainians to fix, these guys stepped up to give them almost brand new tank. That's saying something. The fix and repair did take a long time though, probably making the Ukrainians wonder if the tanks were even coming for their aid. But then after 19 months of a long wait, the Ukrainians finally got the fancy package to be used in combat, and boy did they live up to the hype. The tanks have a powerful 105mm main gun and an EMES-18 fire control system. Together, they are a deadly sight for the enemy. But it is the way Ukrainians use the tanks that left me in awe. You see, there was one downside with the tank. It was pretty lightweight and had a thin protection. Anybody who would go and sit inside would be calling for suicide. So the Ukrainians got a bit creative and fixed the tank's biggest flaw, making the vehicle practically indestructible. They got a hold of explosive reactive armor brick, anti-drone netting, and cage arm, and turned this ordinary vehicle into a real-life transformer. The most effective part of this modified protection is the ERA bricks that work like a charm against anti-tank ammunition. Anything that strikes the ERA bricks will feel sorry that it even came this way. The very next second the bricks get hit, they will detonate. This power move can destroy any weapon or troop that dares poke the ERA. You might wonder, couldn't the same explosion destroy the Leopard 1 too? But no, that's not the case. The ERA is there to protect the tank, and the bricks are all fixed in such a way that they do not have their nasty effect on the tank. So, when I said indestructible, I meant it. And the tanks proved this wild claim too by living up to the expectations of the Ukrainian engineers. Only 6 of these refurbished tanks have been destroyed, up till now. That's truly something. What's more is that one tank was even seen on the internet going against a crowd of drones, getting hit again and again. Yet it came out of the fire, alive and breathing. It was later reported that the tank was struck a dozen times by the quadcopter type FPV drones. The crew got out in time, and the tank saw all of the intense action alone. But if this beast was really standing after getting hit by powerful drones, I think that is a pretty big deal. Number 4, United Kingdom. Next up, we have the United Kingdom, another big name that did not want to side with Russia, and the third highest contributor to the Ukrainians with a $10 billion donation. But this superpower is giving more to the country than you know. The United Kingdom Prime Minister signed a deal with the Ukrainian Prime Minister only days ago. The contract gives the UK the free hand to send in as many gifts as they would like to Ukraine in the sole effort to take down the Russian forces. But do you know what tipped me off about this deal? The intense secrecy that the two prime ministers built around the agreement. What's that all about? The UK Prime Minister was asked if British troops would come and raid Russia as part of the deal, but he refused to comment on that possibility. Do you think there's a chance the UK would take such a big risk? All I know about the agreement is that the UK has promised both military and healthcare support to the Ukrainian, but the secret partnership is valid for 100 years. The United Kingdom has never signed a deal for that long with any country. What do you think is going on here? I can't tell you for sure, but what I can tell you is what the UK has given to Ukraine in the past. Maybe we'll find a hint somewhere in there and find out what the two countries are cooking together. When I dug into the aid the UK is giving to Ukraine, I found a very long list of weapons that will take a day to talk about. So I picked Ukraine's favorite, the Storm Shadow. Shortly after the ATACMS were gifted to Ukraine, the UK popped in with their own long-range missiles to help out the country.
My understanding is also that Storm Shadow has been fired for the first time into Russia. It's very important to bear in mind it has been used inside Ukraine. It's been used against Russian targets, I think in Crimea, but also in other parts of occupied Ukraine. But this is a threshold that has been crossed. It's a big step.
This beast works differently from the ATACMS. It doesn't have a fancy range to show off as the ATACMS, but it is decent enough. The missiles work at a range of 150 miles. To cover up for this small embarrassment, the weapon has a quirky way of how it works. An aircraft comes out of the hangar, launches a missile, and then the missile goes on a hunt to find the target using a GPS and a camera. Once it tracks the target down, it strikes and turns it into dust. The missile seems pretty cool, doesn't it? Well, it comes with a very hefty price tag. Each missile costs $1 million. The aircraft is throwing away $1 million every time it launches a missile to go on the lower ground. You can bet that the Ukrainians are using only a small number of these missiles. Another thing that held them back was that the UK didn't allow the Ukrainians to use the missiles just like the United States. The country was only recently allowed to use it in the Russian territory, but even with all the barriers holding them back, they managed to obliterate Russia's Black Sea naval headquarters. I'd call that a win. Number 5, other members of the European Union. Germany isn't the only member of the EU to step up and help Ukraine in its tough time against the Russians. There is a whole list of other countries that have given both financial and military aid to Ukraine. If we are talking numbers, Denmark beats the other members by giving a whooping $7 billion in the name of military aid. The Netherlands comes close after Denmark, sending $5.5 billion to Ukraine. The other members pitched in as much as they could too. But the one thing that caught my attention in the list of gifts was the ever-popular US-made F-16 fighter jets. An absolute monster in the sky. With its 20mm 6-barrel gun, it could shoot 6,000 rounds per minute. But Ukraine wasn't getting the older version. Like the Germans, these EU members wanted to give a new and upgraded weapon to the Ukrainians. Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Norway are the countries who volunteered for the job. They will send 79 refurbished jets collectively to Ukraine. The delivery from Belgium and Norway is still pending, but the ones coming from Denmark and Netherlands are already halfway done. And seeing how well the package worked out for Ukraine, I'd say the order might double up in the future. Want to know what I'm talking about? Sit tight, because this one is truly insane. In the December of 2024, the F-16 jet in the hands of Ukrainians did something that it had never done before. It made a massive world record. For the first time in the history of the Fighting Falcon, an F-16 fighter jet destroyed 6 cruise missiles in a single combat mission. 6 scary missiles destroyed by a single pilot. I don't even know how to digest that. An F-16 only comes with 4 medium-range and short-range missiles. So, how exactly did it all go down? During an intense attack by Russians on Ukraine, there were over 200 drones and 94 missiles in action. A Ukrainian pilot destroyed the 2 incoming missiles with the short-range missiles and shot down another pair with the medium-range missiles. The aircraft was now out of missiles and running low on fuel. Panic. Adrenaline running high. Fear. The pilot had to go back to the base before a missile could take him down. But halfway in his route, he saw another dirty missile following. It probably wanted to take revenge for his other missile friends. But like a real-life Hollywood action movie, the pilot dived right after the enemy missile with only a cannon in backup.
It's a very, very modern aircraft. It's competitive with the best Western fighters, and so you will. I'm sure that the Ukrainian Air Force will benefit from that. It's a very modern aircraft that they receive from us. So.
He was flying at a crazy speed of 400 miles per hour, yet he took the charge and fired repeatedly at the enemy missile. A few of the strikes connected and the missile exploded, taking another missile nearby along with it. 2 more missiles were down, and the United States couldn't believe it. Well, actually no one could. What's crazy is that the US was the one who taught the Ukrainians how to fly these fighter jets, but no one could even comprehend that a Ukrainian pilot pulled off such a powerful move, a move that no one had even dared to do before. You know what I cannot imagine? If Ukraine is pulling off wild stunts like this on the battlefield with only a small number of F-16 jets, what are they going to do when the whole fleet is parked at their base? That time is not that far, and it might give us the answer to this question too. That's all, folks. On Ukraine's secret ally, what do you think is going on with Canada and Ukraine? Do you think the US will stop funding Ukraine after some time? Is there going to be another surprise package coming after the Russians? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and press the bell icon if you want to stay updated. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.